Happy New Year, guys! You guys are sitting there like, Miss Dana, it's September. What are you talking about? So, you guys have started a new school year. We're starting a new session of Stories in STEAM, and I know for most of us, it is not the new year, right? Like, when we say Happy New Year, we'd say that on January 1st, which is the new year here in America. But today we are going to talk about a different new year. So we're going to talk about Rosh Hashanah. We're going to read this cute little book called Apple Days, a Rosh Hashanah story. So Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year, and it starts at sundown tonight. So just here in a couple hours, it'll be Rosh Hashanah. So Jewish holidays start in the evening, and then they go till the evening of the next day. Okay. So this that I blew to start off, this is called a shofar. It's a ram's horn. And it is used on Rosh Hashanah and also on Yom Kippur. So it's fun, it's loud. Another fun thing about Rosh Hashanah is that to welcome a sweet new year, we have apples and honey. So we're going to read Apple Days, a Rosh Hashanah story, and then we're going to look at some apples and see what happens to them, okay? Apple Days, a Rosh Hashanah story by Allison Sarnoff-Stouffer, illustrated by Bob McMahon. What are you looking forward to this Rosh Hashanah? Katie's teacher asked the class. Hearing the shofar, shouted Max. Chicken soup at Grandma's, exclaimed Abby. Katie raised her hand, beaming. Applesauce, she said, but not just any kind. Every year my mom and I go apple picking, and then we make our own. Katie had even more to share. And I will have a new baby cousin later this month. Applesauce and a baby in the new year, her teacher replied. How exciting! Katie loved apples. She loved biting into their crispy skin and discovering the sweet, tart taste inside. But she loved applesauce even more. Every year at the orchard, Katie and her mother would search for the perfect apples. They would walk the rows picking some of each variety until their bucket was full. Have any of you ever been to an apple orchard to pick your own apples? Raise your hand if you've been. We went last weekend. It was super fun. I went with my niece. She's like 17 months old, so it was very fun to watch her. At home, Katie would place 10 apples on the kitchen counter, and her mother would start to peel. Katie watched as her mother's steady hands moved quickly in circles, unraveling the skin like thread from a spool. Then Katie's mother would core and slice the apples, and Katie would put them into their biggest pot. Katie would take cinnamon and sugar from the pantry and sprinkle them into the pot. Finally, she would squeeze in some lemon juice and add a little bit of water. Soon, the kitchen would fill with the sweet smell of apples and cinnamon. Just thinking about it made Katie's mouth water. Let's make next Wednesday Apple Day, said Katie's mother, and Katie drew a big apple on the calendar. Katie told everybody about Apple Day. Soon her dad knew, her neighbor knew, Carla the hairdresser knew, and Sam the shoe store man knew. The principal knew, Rabbi Portnoy knew, and her friends Max and Abby knew. On Monday, she told her class, It's getting closer. Katie couldn't wait for each day to pass. On Tuesday, the phone rang, and Katie answered. Hi, said Aunt Leah. May I speak to your mom, Katie? Oh, hi, said Katie. Guess what? We are going. Katie, I'm sorry to interrupt, sweetie, but I need your mom now. Katie was puzzled. Aunt Leah always wanted to hear about everything, but Katie went to find her mom. When her mom hung up the phone, she turned to Katie. Your new baby cousin is coming early, so I'm afraid we can't go apple picking tomorrow. But, Mommy, Katie cried, you promised. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I know this is disappointing for you, Katie. It is for me, too. But I have to help Aunt Leah. It's your job to be a big girl. But we won't have applesauce for Rosh Hashanah, said Katie sadly. The next day, Katie's father walked her to school. "Why so sad?" the crossing guard asked. "Isn't today Apple Day?" "We can't go," Katie mumbled. "Can't go?" asked Max. "Why?" "Because of the baby," Katie said. Max told Abby, who told their teacher, who told the principal, who told the rabbi. When Abby got her hair cut, she told Carla, and when Max went to buy school shoes, he told Sam. When Katie and her dad arrived home after school, they found a bright red apple on the doorstep. Next to it was a note that said, "Dear Katie, I heard about what happened. Maybe this will help. Love, Rabbi Portney." The next day, the crossing guard handed Katie a yellow apple, and the principal placed another in her backpack. Katie's teacher gave her an apple at circle time, and so did each of her friends. Her backpack was almost full. Walking home with her dad, Katie passed the shoe store. Sam, too, had a surprise, a jar of cinnamon. "Wait, Katie," shouted Carla from the beauty shop. "I have some sugar and a lemon for you." When they got home, Katie lined up 10 apples. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. On the kitchen counter and tried to remember what her mother did next. She and her father stared at the apples, the cinnamon, and the lemon, wondering exactly how to turn them into applesauce. "First, we have to peel them," Katie said. So her father took out the peeler and got to work. "What's next?" her dad asked. "Mommy finds recipes on the computer," Katie suggested, and climbed onto her father's lap as he searched the internet. "Next, we have to core and chop the apples," her dad said, reading from the screen. "Then Mommy puts them in the big pot," Katie continued. "We have to find it." So in went the apples, and then the cinnamon, and then the sugar, and finally the lemon juice. Dad turned on the stove, and soon the kitchen filled with the sweet smell of apples and cinnamon. One taste, and they knew. "We did it!" Katie exclaimed. The next morning, Katie walked into her classroom proudly carrying a whole tray of cups filled with applesauce. "Thanks for your help, everybody," she said. A few days later, on Rosh Hashanah, she filled Grandma's big crystal bowl with applesauce and placed it in the center of the holiday table. When her mother arrived with Aunt Leah and her new cousin Will, she hugged Katie close. Together, they gazed at tiny Will. Then Katie led her mother to the table. "Oh my," was all her mother could say. Her father laughed. There was one more surprise. Katie reached into her pocket and pulled out a freezer jar filled with applesauce. Not for now, of course, but soon enough Will would taste it and smile. They all would. The end. And then there's a recipe for Katie's applesauce in the back. Hope you guys enjoyed this story about a community coming together to help make some applesauce for a little girl. We're going to look at apples in just a little bit. So we're going to chop them up and see what happens when they're exposed to the air. But before we do that, I'm going to get my science gear on. Are you guys ready? Now that I have my lab coat on, we are all ready to get started with our apple experiment. So what we're going to need is 2 apples. So I've got 2 apples here, and we are going to create an experiment to see what keeps them from browning. So we always have a control when you make an experiment. So that'll be just a piece that we have nothing in, and then I have a whole bunch of stuff. It's out of the view of the camera right now. But I've got white vinegar, baking soda, water, vegetable oil, salt, sugar, and lemon juice. So we're going to soak each of these in that and see what happens, okay? First step is going to be to carefully cut my apple. So I'm going to cut it again in half. So I've got 4 chunks basically in this one. We're going to cut our other apple. So we'll put our first one over where it says control. We're going to take the baking soda and water. mix it nice up so we definitely have it all mixed. Then I'm going to put my apple piece in there, make sure I get it nice and saturated with my baking soda. All right, my next one's going to be vinegar. So we're just going to pour the vinegar into another one of these. Take my apple, make sure I get it and all saturated. So spin it around in there. Put that one there. All right, the next one's just water. So I'm going to pour some water in here. Dip my apple again. Set it. The next one is vegetable oil. So we'll take our vegetable oil. This one's going to be the messy one. Take some vegetable oil, my apple. Next we're gonna make salt water. So I'm gonna go ahead, grab my salt, pour it in, pour water in. I'm gonna go ahead and do just a little more salt, just to make sure we definitely get it nice and salty. I'm gonna take my apple piece, make sure I get all that salt water in it. Nice. Sugar water next. I'm gonna get some sugar from this bag. Right. A little bit of water. We're gonna pour our lemon juice. And I'm gonna dip my last apple. You can kind of see it's already a little brown. And then, so we've got all of our apples in a line over here, ready for our time lapse. Here are our results. So again, from the left to the right, you've got your control, which is pretty brown over there. We've got baking soda, vinegar, water, oil, all of those turned pretty brown. It looks to me like oil even, maybe, and baking soda made it turn even more brown. But then over here, you've got your sugar, well, so salt, sugar, and lemon. And all of those didn't really turn. So that's interesting. So what's happening here is as the apple oxidizes, right? So as the air gets into the apple, into the spaces and stuff, that's what's starting to turn it brown. And so these here are sort of stopping that process. I hope that you guys enjoyed Apple Days, and I hope that you enjoyed the time lapse of the apples turning brown. So that process again is called oxidation. Remember that we do have new packets out, so you can still pick up your apple one or come in next week for our next packet. So next week we are going to be looking at stars, and I hope that you guys will come back and join me same time on Friday. So I hope that you guys will be there to learn all about our stars and constellations. All right, remember to like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and remember that we are open and you guys can come in to browse and pick up to 15 items per library card. We hope to see you soon. Bye!